Is going to church old-fashioned? As spirituality becomes more private and personal, fewer people see the need to be part of a church. Has church just become a place for old people and socialites and young families hoping the Sunday school lessons will help their kids be better behaved? Or could it actually be the essential community God uses to form us? And if so, are you wrong for not caring about or even leaving the church? We're going to be talking about all of that and more on today's episode of Theology on Air. Well, welcome back to Theology on Air. We, of course, are an offshoot of Theology by the Pint, and we gather together here in Houston over interesting topics around theology and faith and culture with some good beer in our hand. And then here in the podcast, we get to go even deeper into some of these ideas. So thanks for joining us. And if you like what we're doing, of course, subscribe, tell a friend, give us bags of money, all that kind of stuff. But I'm Sarah Stone. I'm the executive director for Theology by the Pint. I'm joined, as usual, by Evan McClanahan, senior pastor here at First Lutheran in Midtown. And today we're joined, first-time guest, Joel Davis. Joel,
long-time listener, first-time guest.
I just made that joke in the last one, and I'm like, I don't think young people get that joke.
No.
Because it's a radio joke.
Yeah, radio.
Oh, bygone days. Like, I'm so old. I mean, I don't even... Anyway, here we go. Joel is the pastor of adult ministries at Bayou City Fellowship here in the Spring Branch area, where he and his family have attended for 11 years. That's good, given what we're talking about today. You've got some street cred. Yeah. He is finishing his master's in divinity from Okanagan Bible College and is very much looking forward to reading books that he selected for himself again.
It's been a long time.
That's cute.
Been a long time.
Yeah. So, and your degree is like, what are you wanting to do with that?
I just keep doing what I'm doing. Just keep.
But be official.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know, a lot of pastors have, at least in my tradition, do not almost look negatively on formal training. And so actually getting that, I think, is important to me anyway.
So that's funny because you run in sort of more Baptist-y circles. And I grew up Presbyterian and we're the opposite. Yeah. We're like, oh, you're not ordained. Gross.
Why would you? Yeah, exactly.
But okay, so we met a few weeks ago and I was picking your brain about all kinds of stuff. We're going to get you on the panel for one of our upcoming events. That's going to be a lot of fun. But I asked you things that you were passionate about, things you had a soapbox about. And this was one of them. And we decided to do a podcast about.
Was it the first one that I mentioned was like yelling, or did I sound angry when I
wagged your finger and you clench your jaw? No, You're very friendly. And any thumbnail that we use for this is just in jest. But it was about this idea of people going to church, why people are leaving the church, but more like why you shouldn't leave the church. So I thought that was great because we've done so much about like deconstruction and people walking away from church, but we haven't really done a lot on like, so why stay, And why should you, but why also, like, is that a good thing? And that you not just should, but you benefit from it. So, but before we get into that, tell people just a little bit about you, maybe like your faith story, how you came to be the man that you are today. Give us the story.
So I grew up in the DFW area. I grew up in Texas. I'm born and raised in Texas. Grew up in the church, too. I really don't, like all of my earliest memories kind of center around my growing up in church. We were there. We kind of like one of those if the doors were open, we were there kind of families and stuff. I was in the same church growing up for most of my entire life. My family moved from a church across town that my mom grew up at when I was like 5 or 6, and then we were at my little church in Bedford, Bible church in Bedford, from 6 until I came back there during my college years. I was at Dallas Baptist, and I would come back most weekends and go to my church, church that I grew up at. So
you're kind of an anomaly for a millennial.
I guess. I attended the like name brands in town and stuff like that. But for the most part, that was still like where I considered home, and would come home and still recognize everybody and things like that. So I've only changed churches with the exception of when I was 5, which wasn't really me. Like just for moves, just to relocate. I've never just had this preferential. I'm not really vibing with this, or things aren't really going well. And so, what would it take for me to change? Where's the grass greener?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't sympathize with people's rationale. It's just that in my life, I've had opportunities, or had times, maybe not opportunities, but times where I was like, I would love to be in any other church setting than this one right now. And God just did not open that door. God just did not make that readily available to me. And so, and as a consequence of that, or like subsequent to that, I was really glad, like some of the things that would happen in staying, I was really thankful for those things. And so, I'm like born and raised, I've just been around church my whole life. My boss, the campus pastor at my church, he the term that he kind of uses, and I don't think this is not like a generational thing. I guess it's a generational thing. But he said you're like a churchman. That's a weird term. What does that mean? But
sounds like statesman.
Yeah. It's like, but I believe in the local assembly of the church, and so when I look around and see people, kind of moving around and changing between churches, I go, I don't know that we've really thought this through. I don't know that we're like looking too far downstream. And so that's one of the things that just over the course of my life, it's become important to me. Because I'm going, hey, I've been here for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. And there's some down years and there's some up years, and like, stick around, it's,
I imagine that, as you were talking, I'm like, I bet your wife is really happy that you have that view of church, because
sometimes
it means it's a man that knows about commitment. So that probably translates to relationships too. I'm serious.
I hope so.
People look at church these days, I think, like they're dating this person, and then they're dating that person, and then they're like, but as I joked earlier, you got to put a ring on it.
Yeah, I guess, and that's kind of like one of the reasons that it is important to me is I look around like y'all, and I don't see that there's a whole lot of institutions or opportunities for people, or that not demand, because churches obviously don't demand that we stay, but that compel us to stay. We can change almost anything. I can change everything from like my Netflix subscription, like all of my kind of bevy of subscriptions of choice. I can change those on a monthly basis. I can change, like any association that I have.
Yeah.
And so it appears as though so little is lost. And so I think for most of us, like church just gets lumped into that thing of like things that I could do differently if I had the opportunity to.
That's
and
really
why
well
not?
said.
Even within Netflix, you can choose from a million things.
That's right.
You only watch
Totally.
less than 1% of what they have, probably
Absolutely.
less than 1% of 1%. But yeah, we're religious consumers, and then churches then become religious, service providers.
Right.
And it's a relatively recent phenomenon. I mean, only in the last, 100 years, with the automobile and, the ability to be far flung and,
Exactly.
I was actually just talking to someone this last Sunday who grew up in a really rural area, and they I was shocked by this. Even Jews and Catholics and Protestants would often go to church together because it was the only one, for miles. But but before we get into all the reasons why people should join and stay at a church and why they're terrible people for leaving, I'm joking. But before we get to that, let's put some important caveats out there about like kind of what we're not talking about, because I don't want people to be like, oh, well, I had an abusive pastor and you're telling me to stay or something like that. So give us a few, like what we're not talking about today is, and then we'll get to what we are.
Well, so I have this conversation a lot with other, people at our church and other pastor friends. And one of the ones, it is the rural, like that's one of the persons that comes up is like, what about people who, hey, they're in a rural context. They almost couldn't leave their church if they wanted to, but their pastor is, authoritarian or abusive or heretical, or like, what do you say to that person? I say, well, yeah, absolutely. Like when we talk about abuse, we are absolutely saying like, get to a place of safety. Don't put yourself back in that environment.
Yeah.
By no means are we talking about that at all. I also think that we're not really talking about heresy. Like there are churches that we're not talking about tertiary or secondary issues that really just whole cloth embrace some doctrine that the church has across denominations, across time, unilaterally, creedally said, this is not what we believe. And so if that's like the church's outright position, then, and that's obviously not you, then no, go find someplace. I think we get really, really sloppy with the word heresy nowadays. Like
it's a joke. It's a meme.
It is.
I am really guilty of it. I'm always calling people heretics. I need to stop doing that.
No, but like, have you guys seen The Good Place?
Yes.
There's the first episode where Kristen Bell comes in and she's talking to Danson, and she's like, well, I just thought it was like this. He's like, oh no, like nobody ever gets it 100% right. Here's I can't remember the guy's name, something Schmidt or something. Here he got it 92% right. Yeah. We were all amazed, but he was on mushrooms, so we don't really, So it's like I don't know, but there are these big box heretical teachings that like you should part ways and just say, look, I even then maybe contend for that truth for a little while. And if the church just says this is where we're at, we're not talking about that either, for sure. I get a little bit sloppier, and I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what y'all think about this, but I get a little bit more. I'm more comfortable with if somebody that they move, especially in Houston, like we've got a massive metropolitan area. Somebody is going to a church, let's say they are in like the Heights or Oak Forest or, one of our kind of further in downtown type neighborhoods. They move 20 miles away.
OTL.
And it's still like outside the loop. Those 281ers. And sorry, very local context.
No, I love it. I know who's listening that's going to roll their eyes.
346er.
That's true. So, I don't even know those people.
That's just new. That's just a new number.
Yeah.
I fought for my 713 when I moved to Houston. I'm not even kidding. Okay. I told Verizon.
No one thinks you're kidding if they know you.
I want a 713.
No.
I kid sometimes.
Yeah,
but not about phone numbers.
Not about area codes.
Okay.
So with proximity, if somebody moves to a totally different suburb of Houston or whatever, and they say like, we want to be proximate to our church community, I get that. And maybe that's not a good reason. Maybe it is. I don't know. But that's a gray area for me.
Yeah.
But I just think that there's so many reasons that people, whether they verbalize them or whether they're just thinking them in the quietness of their own hearts, that are, if somebody pushed back, it's not really a good reason. But we're not talking about abuse. We're not talking about heresy. I'm not talking about even proximity. And I want to say, I guess, like from the jump, I think there are good reasons, even good, like we'll call them secondary reasons, to look for a new church home. I just think from my own experience, my own perspective, like where God's put me in this conversation, I kind of want to position myself in the spot of saying, hey, maybe let's reconsider, or maybe let's consider for just a little bit longer your justification for doing this. And then if you're still there, then no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love all of that. Okay. So before we started recording, I was joking that, and you guys have all heard me say this before, that choosing a church is sort of like dating. I've been doing both in the last year, looking for a man and looking for a church. And there's a lot of I joke, but it's a lot of similarities, because you're looking for something that is practically perfect for you. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not going to find perfection, but you're going to hold out for as much as you can. And I think you mentioned in the notes that you sent us, there's this thing like this burden of choice, right? And I think that happens in the dating world. In the 1950s, people didn't have apps that showed them hundreds and hundreds of people at their fingertips. And in the same way, we now have all this choice about church. And even within a denomination, even within a style within that denomination, you have choices. Talk about that and how that might be kind of messing things up for people.
Well, it's kind of the Pandora's box.
Okay.
And I'm not totally convinced that I don't think that we can put Pandora back in the box in that case of there is, like in Houston, in other big, not even big, like mid to large cities, there are so many churches in every single denomination, on every single street corner. And so it's not that the choice is absolutely there. And so what I end up asking people to do is to almost like fake it and just pretend that choice is not there. Because, you mentioned the paradox of choices. Barry Schwartz did, it's an older TED talk that he did about, I think he counted, there's something like between types of salad and types of salad dressing in your grocery store. There's something like 11,000 choices or like combinations that could be made of salad. And that choice is, it's not actually freeing. It's actually terrifying. Yeah, shackling. Where especially you start to think to yourself, oh, okay, this is a good one, but I'm not sure it's the best. Yeah, like there's the assumption, real or imagined, that there is an ideal out there, and you spend, so much time chasing it. I was doing this the other day where our daughter, she's 6, she we were, scooping her some ice cream, and we broke the ice cream scoop, and we're like, okay, we need a new ice cream scoop, and we get on Amazon, and it's like, immediately I thought to myself, is there a best ice cream scoop available? Like
it heats up with the stuff inside.
What if it how smooth can it go through the ice cream? And what if it's like, what about the really hard ice cream? Like, what is that out there? And so I'm not kidding. Like, I'm in blogs. I'm in Country Living, Men's Digest, like
America's
where are the
Test
top
Kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure they've tested ice cream scoopers.
Absolutely. And at the top of the Google, it's like top ice cream scoops for 2023. Like they're obviously innovating
they're
this.
Come out with a lot better stuff
every year. And so there's this assumption that you don't know it, but there's a new one that right down the corner, and they might.
So
be
maybe
doing
hold
it.
off and don't buy one in 2023.
Don't.
24 is right around the corner.
Here's my advice: classic.
Go
for the classic.
Okay, this is subtext because Evan wants you to come to his church.
Do you want the little
subtext? In fact,
First Lutheran, 1311 Holman Street.
Meta point to all of this is that yes, I think that we live in a consumerist, society. People they think that way about everything, including church. Churches have stupidly bought into
Catered
that, and they are now competing against one another,
innovating.
Yes.
Quote,
so
unquote,
in the old days,
intentional.
you went to the church that you lived nearby,
Yep.
and they had the same mass for 1,000 years.
Yep.
And you didn't like it? Well, too damn bad. And,
we're gonna have to bleep that out. Mercy.
And now that's not a bad word. That's in the Bible.
Okay, not in that way.
Anyway, so we'll see if you bleep it though. Then they're going to think I said.
No, but then we get to put explicit on there, and everyone will listen.
No, okay. Anyway, I feel as a traditional church that really hasn't changed, so to speak. And I mean, it's the liturgy I grew up with, and I didn't grow up here, but it's the same hymnal and whatnot. But everyone else has changed.
Yeah.
So they're all competing, and they're all offering all those religious consumers out there something cool and hip and new, and they're making me look like I'm old and passé.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how am I old? I'm just the same thing. Yeah. Did that much change in the last 30 years?
Well,
really?
No. And that's the. So here's what the yard looks like on the other side of the fence in the non-denominational, Baptist adjacent world, right? Is we, as people look around and we want something that's more rooted. Right, and so don't worry, they're coming right back to you. They got tired. They got tired of the innovation and said, this needs to feel like it's older than I am, right? So yeah, but it is that consumerism of, okay, I want something new, now I want something rooted and ancient, now I want something that is with the times or whatever. It's still that the reality of that choice is still there. Right. And so I don't think it's making us healthier. I don't think it's making our associations and our relationships and our institutions better. And so I just end up saying to people, fake it, pretend the option is not there. And that's one thing that I said to you, Sarah, when we first met around some of these topics was, take as long as you want. Like if you're new to Houston, new to wherever you are, you're searching for a new church, you just got married and you're trying to figure out where you're going to go together, whatever. Take as long as you want to find a church, attend 40, or more, if it makes you feel like you've kind of exhausted the search around you. But once you decide, okay, this is where God help me, I'm going to call home, make it almost impossible. Like, just put the bar so high on what would convince me to leave this place. And I think that people, if that's a value that they're able to internalize, I think they'll be better off for it. I think.
Yeah. And I told you before we started recording that was really meaningful to me. I've been church shopping for almost a year now. I think I found one. So you can message me later and ask me which one it is. I don't want to compete with Cranky Pants over here. But I'm joking. You should totally come check out Evan's church and Joel's church. They're both really wonderful churches in the area. But I thought that's such a great way to say it. Take as long as you need and then make it impossible to leave. And so let's get into what that might look like to make it impossible to leave. It's something you're doing mentally. It's also the way that you're interacting with the church. So one of those ways is when you sent us the outline that said something about when you were talking about like church families and the church you've kind of decided to put a ring on, or maybe they put a ring on you. I don't know. You said something about church pronouns. Talk about church pronouns.
Is that clickbaity enough? Would that get us some more views?
What are your preferred pronouns? That's clickbaity.
My preferred pronouns are our and we.
Oh, that is so pastoral.
Isn't that great? But and I'm joking, but I have this happen so often where people who have been coming to our church for a while, like they're members or whatever, regular attender member, yada, yada. But they've been coming, Bayou City is their home church.
Yeah.
And they're saying, like, they come to me and they say, hey, how do y'all do small groups? How do y'all, where
what
y'all
do you guys offer
serving?
For Christmas?
What are your service times on Christmas Eve?
Hey guys, Sarah here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is an amazing podcast episode, but I just wanted to tell you that Theology by the Pint is growing. We are now a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're expanding. This coming year, with your help, we'll grow our reach by adding events in multiple Houston suburbs, as well as launch a youth version. Don't worry, those will be pints of iced coffee, not beer. We're adding follow-up conversations to reach the spiritually curious and the unchurched. We're also growing our connections and partnerships with more local churches, and you can help us grow by praying for us, by telling your friends or church about us, and of course, by partnering with us financially. To donate, go to theologybythepint.org/give. If each of our podcast listeners gave $100, we would reach our annual budget right then. Consider donating today. Okay, enjoy the rest of the show.
And I jokingly, graciously, like, who is the you or the y'all that you are referring to? Because we are a church family, and I'm a little bit hesitant on the language of family and things like that. I think it can be really heavy-handed. And so I'm not trying to, manipulate or coerce in that way. But I'm saying, like, one of the things that we are is a local body. And,
that's right.
And as long as I'm suspicious that, sometimes I'm sure it's accidental or unintentional, whatever, but I'm suspicious that as long as we are kind of keeping church at enough of an arm's length that we're not actually identifying with the church that we're attending, maybe it's a product of that consumerist mentality. Maybe not. Maybe we're just not ready to commit. But I think it says something. Whereas until we're able to say, like, what are our values as a church? Where are we invested as a church? How do we answer these critiques and all those sorts of things? I think that identification with a church is so important. And like, you're taking, because like when I identify with my actual flesh and blood family, when I married my wife, like I accept and I belong to all of those people, including all of their faults, all of their issues, all of their junk and baggage and sins, and and so it shouldn't surprise us at all that a church family with a lot more,
variables.
A lot more diversity of perspective and background and variables, that we're going to have all of those same problems attendant to our church, right? So we just kind of take all of that in. Henry Nouwen says in his book Community that community is hard. Community is the place where the person you least want to live with always lives. I love that quote because
let's all name who that is in our own.
Yeah, let's go around.
Evan, you start.
By
I'm
name.
joking.
So like don't be surprised by that. But that's exactly where we get a chance to practice some of the one another's and that we
Some of the what?
One another's, like the Bible verses
love
about
one another, care for one another. Yeah, like
bear one another's burdens.
There you go. Yeah,
I just had to get one in there. Let you know I actually read my Bible. Yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with the passages, but I never heard them. Is that a thing? They're called that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I heard it once, and
maybe I like it. Sounds like a good sermon series title.
Oh
Boom.
boy.
Yeah.
Evan loves doing sermon series.
It's my favorite.
He does not. Continue.
No, it's identification.
By the way, the things you're saying are also just really good, like life hacks. I mean, this is a great way to be, like you said, married, in a family, with your own family, your friend group, your whatever. I think you're talking about things that make for lasting and meaningful relationships and a good full life.
Yeah.
So
if it's so good, why doesn't it happen more? Why does it get so screwed up?
Like what, church?
Why do people leave? It sounds like they have every reason to stay, you know?
Oh, no, I think
they don't like Uncle so-and-so's weird oddity.
Yeah.
And so,
exactly.
And because they can go just right down the street and get somebody else's baggage. And for a while that seems shiny and new.
And it's not like I don't think that people look for in their churches what I think churches are intended or like by Jesus to provide. Like they're just, if they're looking for, like
a place to meet.
Yeah. I mean, what's the kind of tongue in cheek kind of dig is like a concert and a TED talk, if that, you can get that anywhere. But if you are, a decent dating pool, or whatever.
By the way, no joke. Like so many people I know have changed churches and are looking for churches because the church they were going to has all old people, no one young to look for to date.
Sure. Is that one of the gray area reasons to change churches?
Not a gray area, but listen, you can be part of a church and then maybe just go to the social stuff. One of the big ones that has all the single people.
What difference do you think church size makes? Because really,
I was going to ask that question. That's great. No, keep going. That's awesome.
I mean, small churches and large churches have very little in common.
Yeah.
So like it's been said, two small churches of different denominations, for example, have a lot more in common than even two churches in the same denomination that are different
much
sizes.
Different sizes.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, so I would think that in a smaller church, when people leave, it's tougher for everybody. It feels personal.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
On the receiving end. Larger churches, I don't know. I would think people come and go quite easily. And they try to lock them in. They try to lock them into small groups so that, they've got that small church relationship. But I don't know. What do you think? Yeah.
I do think that it is proportionally probably easier to leave, right? And our church is not mega, but we're a good sized church, and we have a 9 o'clock and an 11 o'clock, and they're like, if you attend one, you may not run into somebody that attends the other, and there's plenty of people out there that think if you have two different services, you've got two different churches meeting under the same roof and things like that. So without getting into all of the ecclesiology, I think that churches my size and up, I guess, are my church's size and up, we do ourselves a disservice when we there's a certain amount of we have to set aside some people for vocational ministry in that context. I feel like we do. I guess we do. But then at some point, have we just professionalized the ministry piece of it? I've had really good conversations with some of the men in our church about men's ministry, and they want to there's guys that want to basically take it off my plate. And I think I have some responsibility over this, I don't want you to take it entirely off my plate. And so I think there are, like you mentioned, a smaller church, there's one paid pastor, that's it. And everybody else is volunteering, is all hands on deck. And so somebody that leaves, like you said, it's felt, it's personal. It's, so I still, this is a different conversation for a different day. I still hold out a great deal of hope for like larger churches. And I've seen the benefit of being a part of one myself and some of the things that we're able to do. And so, but what I find myself doing is constantly fighting maybe against the grain. I mean, of just like trying to make it feel and really be smaller, and not just like, I'm going to hook you into small group, but like, hey, what are like, I don't want you to just be here to consume on Sunday morning. I want to know like, what are the area, what is God doing in your life? What are you passionate about? How do I equip you and mobilize you to do what God intends you to do in this church setting? And there's still like lots of people, it's still personal, like for me, and it's not, and this is I'm like trying to be pretty self-aware of my own place in this conversation of like, you should stay at church, because my salary comes from there. Yeah. So I understand that I'm vested in this to some extent. But I was doing this before before it was vocational for me. And I still kind of like, I hope that transcends. And I've been, hurt by churches too, both like as a member and vocationally, but I still look back and I'm thankful for the work of like the work that it took to stick around, and the work that it took to iron out some junk with other people that, also weren't going anywhere.
It is like a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Is it better after you've gone through some conflict and figured some things out? Yeah.
It is a relationship.
It is a relationship.
Well, so this isn't in the notes, but you've talked a lot about maybe not wrong, but sort of side reasons why people go to a church or pick a church for this or that. But why do we go to church? Why ought we go to church? What is church? Why? Like, why go?
I think that,
or maybe what's the purpose?
I think that we lose this. I mean, this is very like well trodden topic of conversation, but we are communal people and we do not live out our faith in Jesus and just in isolation. We live it out in the context of community. Virtually every metaphor in the New Testament about the church is a body with many parts and a family with many members and, a city, a community. And so if we say that we're just going to do this solo, I don't know how we look at following Jesus and we say, okay, Jesus, I am ready to follow you. And Jesus says, cool. Have you met my bride?
Yeah.
And we say, actually, your bride sucks. Like your bride is the worst. I've been super hurt by your bride. But that is the actual description of the church, is the bride of Christ. And so how then do we look at this group of people, jacked up, messy, broken, like liable to hurt us as each individual local church and the whole church, like universal, is, and say, I don't want anything to do with this entity that literally Jesus sent his Holy Spirit and filled for the purpose of like his ongoing presence and hands and feet in the world. We just say, no thanks. And then I guess that's one point. And then the second point that I hear often is, well, me and my group of friends, we are also Christians and this is church for us.
I was actually just going to ask, go ahead and take your drink. I was just going to ask something along those lines, or even the God and I are fine kind of camp. But
God and I are fine. It is definitely like where I just said, was where I would go with the bride of Christ piece. But then like me and my friends, we are church. Like we do church when we get together. We eat together. Look at 1 Corinthians. Like, isn't that what? It's a love feast. That's what we're doing. Some of the other things that the first, like even if we just wanted to stay in Corinth, that church did was expel immoral brothers, was have orderly worship, was contribute to one another's needs, was submit to the authorities, to the God ordained authorities of those local churches. And so cool. Okay, so where are you tithing to your group of friends? Are you like submitting to who's the authority in your group of friends? Are you, do you have ordered worship that you all agree on in your group of friends? Do you expel your immoral brother in your group of friends? Like none of, I at least I'm suspicious. I don't think that any of those things are really happening. Right. And so those are things like, it's so easy for me to say, hey, Jesus and I are good because like I don't ever have to submit to any other. There's no like, and Jesus makes lots of demands, but I'm maybe not paying attention to them, or I'm not listening to them through the mouth of another human being, and so like, I'm great with this, I would just say there's a lot of things that are being done, sometimes in a gross way, sometimes, in degrees, right? Sure. In local churches, but maybe there's a reason that Jesus asks us to submit to our leaders to listen to the leaders in the context of a church. Maybe there's a reason that he pleads with Euodia and Syntyche to agree in the Lord in their context. Maybe they needed to work through some things together. I'm just not at all convinced that when people say, hey, me and my group of friends, that is church for me. Yeah. I think that if that is your vision of church, you're missing out on a lot of what churches ought to look like.
Yeah. Well, and historically, it would have been almost the only time people heard from the Bible. Yeah. They didn't have a Bible on their phone, much less in their home.
Right.
So so much of this is just, it's like modern change. And I'm not saying, well, let's just go back to, I don't know, the 1500s or something.
No, me either. Yeah.
But like my toilet and all that. But but I mean, I do think that a lot of the problems, we're experiencing are a result of modernity. And so it almost seems like if we can resist modernity, then it, at least in the life of the church, it would help. What about the role of children and the needs of children? Because in churches like mine, they'll go to churches like yours because we don't have a critical mass for Sunday school.
Yeah. Or youth group.
Or youth group. I mean, it's we have a nursery attendant for a few little small children. My daughter now teaches a handful of kids of multiple ages, but so many people have left. Frankly, stab me in the back is how it feels. If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Oh no, we need more for our kids.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do that for my kids. You see, my kids grew up in this church.
Right.
It's good enough for them. Oh, but it's not good enough for yours. Oh, okay. We don't have the wraparound service for your family.
Yep.
So that your children can have all of the resources they need to become Christian. That's bullcrap.
Yeah.
It's total bullcrap.
I appreciate you toning it down on that one. That's good.
Hey, I can leave. I mean,
no,
I'm serious.
I am curious.
And by the way, if all those people had stayed and built something, we would have something.
Yes.
But they all leave they go to the bigger church and they chip off a couple of bucks and they get their kid to have the wraparound service. And it's annoying is the nice way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I grew up in very similar like church context to that, where I was a nursery worker, at the 9 o'clock, like the Sunday school hour. And then I'd come into big church, and everything. And so I look back and I think that those experiences formed me in a way, like to your point, Evan, maybe I should probably don't know if I should say this on air. I think that like this is as far at this like my size of church. I go, wow, there's a lot of people, and I think that we should probably chip away, like by planting other churches more locally at our total number. To get away from a feeling that we have to provide this, like you said, bumper to bumper curbside service kind of approach. I would say this is the best argument that I have for people who also leave my church for even larger, guy came to me one time and said, like, yeah, it was just awesome at our new church. They all loaded up on charter buses to go to their, youth retreat. Like, we have 40 kids in our youth group. What are you talking about? Like, how many do you need?
Wow.
So, but what the best argument that I heard was, your kids, their tastes, their needs, what you think their needs are, their friend groups. So how many people have left my church looking for, following their kids' friend group, that goes to who knows where, bigger, smaller, whatever, different church.
By a different school.
Different school, whatever. Say, all of those things in your kid's life are changing faster than they change their socks, right? So you uprooting your whole family in order to chase a friend group that inevitably will stab your kid in the back in a matter of months over a boy or a girl. And now you will be right back to square one with people that you don't know, that you've only known for a few months now. You will be worse off. So a family that's at our church that I'm so grateful for, they said, what my kids need is to see me rooting in a church and to see me serving faithfully. And they may not have, the
bells and whistles,
whatever those bells and whistles are. But those bells and whistles are available in a number of other contexts in the community, in the city, whatever. And so this is where we do church. This is our church family.
And I also think we can each think of somebody that we know that grew up in a really small church where they didn't have a youth group and they didn't have VBS, and they are now just rooted in their faith, a person of character, a person you go to ask questions about the Bible. It's not like if you don't do those things, you won't be a quote good Christian. No. And I'm putting that in quotes for obvious reasons, but those things don't make your faith real. They're maybe fun add-ons.
And just pragmatically, has it worked? My argument is that every metric related to church is going down. Yeah. Attendance, membership, knowledge,
engagement, knowledge,
everything is going down. It's been on a downward slope since really 1965, but even since the late 90s, it's really sped up. So I'm we're doing all these things, we're providing all these services. You hear about all these churches doing these amazing things. Is it working? Yeah. Does anyone ever stop to ask that? Yeah. Now, you can't 100% answer that question because we don't have a placebo effect, where we can say, well, if we had done the other thing, it would have worked better.
Sure.
Right.
But, I tend to think that, my own view is that the church should be the kind of still point in a turning world. And if that's what we're willing to do and we commit to it and we don't compete with one another, we would be in a much better place. But we haven't done that. We have forsaken that. We're competing with each other. We're doing the new shiny thing. We're producing Hollywood light crap because we cannot compete with the entertainment industry that is thoroughly satanic. Yeah. Come on. I had someone who said, I don't go to, I won't name it, but it's a big mega church here in Houston.
Rhymes with, I'm joking. Joking.
I don't go to that church anymore because their contemporary service is kind of like the 1990s.
Kind of like Welcome to the 1990s then.
Goodness. Well, that's old now. 90s style contemporary music is old school. Yeah. It's old style. There's more cutting edge contemporary.
I'll take K-Ben's call any day. Just saying. Come on. Okay, so let's say we have somebody that's listening and they are in a church where they're like, I don't know, I'm not kind of feeling it. And they're in your notes, you call them judge and jury. They're they're not feeling it. They haven't left yet, but they're what do you have to say to them?
So I'm going to steal my notes real quick because there is this incredible quote from Bonhoeffer in his little Life Together work. He says this is every human wish and dream that is injected into the Christian community is a hindrance to genuine community and must be banished if genuine community is to survive. He who loves his dream of a community more than the Christian community itself becomes a destroyer of the latter, even though his personal intentions may be ever so honest and earnest and sacrificial. So what Bonhoeffer is basically saying is if you love this ideal or this vision for what community could look like for yourself, you can't love that for too long without coming to hate, despise, reject, condescend, judge the actual community of people that you are with. So what I would say to someone who is I don't know, is in what ways have you honestly found yourself unfair, there's probably some legitimate judgments that can be made, but unfairly judging the men and women, individuals, and the whole shebang of your local church? In what ways are you hyper focusing on their worst elements, rather than saying, gosh, there's some really beautiful things that are happening at our church. And I can see that if we work through X, Y, or Z and just, keep at it, then these things are really going to contribute to our good, to my flourishing, my family's flourishing, our community's flourishing. There's this story I was looking up. Everybody knows that like tree roots go deeper than the actual tree goes up out of the ground, right? So I was looking up.
It's like Pastor Class 101.
Class 101, yeah, number one illustration in the book. So I was looking that up, and I wanted a video of a big tree having to get moved, right? And there was one not long ago right here in Houston. It's called the Compton Oak, and it was down in League City, and they wanted to expand a highway. I don't know which one. And this oak was right there. And so they decided, instead of cutting it down, they were going to move it. And it took them 30 days. I think it was something like $100,000 or like $50,000. I don't know. It was an insane amount of money. 30 days. They dug a huge hole around this thing, deep, deep, deep. They had a wooden whole box that they constructed around it to shore it up. They lifted it. They're soaking it with water, keeping it alive. And then when they finally get to move it, there are these huge like front end loaders, like major equipment that's just pawing at the ground just to move this thing like 100 yards. And I thought about that, and I thought, if that is the kind of care and attention to detail that we put into moving one of these big trees, like how deep are the roots in your own life going into your church community? Hopefully deep. And are you really counting the cost? Are you really weighing the downstream effects, the cost of leaving, or are you just like, this should be fine, and just ripping that thing up by the roots with no long-term plan of like, what am I losing? Like, what's the relational like investment? Call it capital if you want. Like, what are the connections that I'm just like, oh, I'm sure we'll see each other. You're never going to see that person again. You're never going to walk through the stuff of life with those people again. Is it really that easy? And I'm saying, I don't think that it is. So where are you unfairly judging the other members of your church, applying a standard to them that you would never apply to yourself or want someone else to apply to you? And then have you actually considered the ramifications of leaving, like the roots that you're ripping up, never to be transplanted again? And I can't imagine trying to restart my life with all of the people that have fought with me, worked with me, prayed for me, and my family, and just saying like, well, I'm almost 38 years old and we're just going to try and reboot. I think I have a neighbor or two that goes to this church down the road. We'll try that. Like, that would be, I think, catastrophic for my relational communal life and my wife and daughters. So it just doesn't seem worth it to me.
It's interesting when you were telling that story and I could see where the metaphor was going. I thought to myself, I'm not so sure that everyone has those deep roots.
Well, that's true too.
But that's part of the problem, right? But well, I grew up as a pastor's kid at a pretty small church, so I know what you're talking about. And I've seen it play out as our family has gone through suffering. And in the last few years, my brother passed away and the church just rallied around my family. But so for people that don't yet have those kind of roots, but they think, man, that sounds good. Take your drink, do what you need to do. But they think, I want that. How do they get that? Like, how do we commit to, what does church commitment look like? How do we practice it? What's the sort of how to get to the point where, the roots are so deep that they wouldn't want to uproot them?
Yeah. I mean, it starts at the obvious stuff. I mean, like, show up and get connected to a Sunday school or a small group, or like find a group of people that you can come to know and that can come to know you. Like, if it's so that's like for my church, that's the first place that I point someone. But I also point them to like, we have every quarter, we have this, we have our, call it like a family gathering, a family meeting or whatever. But it's our like, it's a business meeting, it's an old school, like
town hall,
it's like, here's the finances. Here's what I'm excited about as a pastor. Like, here's what's coming up. Here's what I want you to know about. Here's what I'm concerned about. Here's what we're praying for. And in the coming year and things like that. And I want people to care enough about our church to show up to something like that and to ask hard questions. What ministry partners do we have? How are we caring for them?
And
what
why
are their
is it
needs?
Theology by the Pint? Yeah.
And why did they just change their name? I really want to know. But by the way, I did. Everyone that I've talked to said they like Theology by the Pint even better.
Oh, good.
So there's
awesome.
a little bit of feedback.
By the pint, it's accessible. One pint at a time.
One pint at a time.
Yeah.
So do that. I want people. If somebody's going to like call our church home, I want to get to know that person. Like, I don't think that our church should grow past our pastoral staff's ability to know everyone. Maybe not every one of us.
I love that. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. So if you're a member at our church, then I want to know who you are. I want to take you out for coffee. I want to go get lunch. I want to know what's your story?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you here? Like, why would you be here rather than someplace else?
Yeah.
And honestly, like, this is to Evan's point earlier, I have done this myself before, where if somebody says, I'm coming, I always say, are you new to Houston or just new to Bayou? And if they say, oh, just new to Bayou, I'm like, well, where were you before?
Yeah.
And
why did you leave?
Why did you leave? Get back there, But I joke, but that's like, I want you to take seriously, like, I want my people to take seriously why they if they left a place, why did they leave a place? Is that really worth it? Okay, if you're going to be here, like, let's talk about like what, is that going to happen again? Really. So take a pastor out for coffee, get to know, know people deeply, and care enough about the church to figure out what's our direction, where are we going, how are we serving the city, how are we serving the world, and rinse and repeat until we meet Jesus. That's my.
And then we will have to see all the people you left at those other churches, and be like, why didn't you go to First Lutheran? Yeah. But don't worry, Evan will be completely sanctified there, and he won't drop D word on you. I'm so horrified still. Obviously, I'm joking. I like that.
Are you?
Yes, obviously. Okay, so
I thought dang was okay.
Listener, go back and listen. No, okay.
Check the tapes. We got the receipts.
Check the tapes. Okay, so be part of a small group, find a way to serve, talk to the pastor, be part of like either whether it's town hall meetings, congregational meetings, but just sort of the life of the church.
Yeah, the life of the church. And that's like boilerplate stuff. But I think what comes with that is care enough about your association to the local church that it would be painful to imagine leaving that church. And I know, I have like you, Evan, there are times that I have absolutely felt stabbed in the back by somebody leaving. There are times that I totally understand when people leave or whatever. There's a little of both. It's not. I don't want any. If I have it, because I'm going to send this out to every one of my friends. If when I have friends that like hear this and hear me say like there are good reasons to leave. I try my best not to hold grudges, take it personally. Yeah. I want to get over it. I want to move past it. I want to see you at HEB and not be awkward and weird. Yes. But I just at the same time, tap the brakes. Let's consider for a little bit longer. So
I love that.
Yeah.
One last thought, which is just a really, 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 really modern problem around this, which is the I call it the 2020 effect or something, but
virtual.
Really, well, not really the virtual, but the fissures in the culture. Now, maybe in the non-denom world, there's kind of a more uniformity on those issues. But in the mainline Protestant world,
there's not.
There is a lot of divide around BLM, LGBT, COVID stuff, political stuff, because The political stuff has got the kind of right-left dynamic is, it's there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
The abortion issue. There's a lot of overlap on these issues. So no need for comment necessarily, but I have definitely had people leave who just were like, we can't stay here anymore because you're too conservative or whatever. And I'm I might be a little rough around the edges from time to time. I think it's just the biblical position, but I do think that has been, and yes, people leaving for and just not coming back after COVID. They're comfortable with video.
Yeah, I didn't even think to ask, and we're kind of out of time, but about the virtual. There's a church here in town. I actually really love this church, but I tease them because they talk about having, so that this church won't know that I'm outing them. They'll talk about having like 5 campuses, and they have like 4 campuses, but they call their online one a campus. I'm like, that's not a campus. No. But
it's a web page.
I think that falls in the same category as you talking about my friends and I do church.
Yeah.
Like if you're watching it on Sunday mornings and that's your only church exposure, that's really not the body of Christ.
Yeah. I wrestle with the digital one a little bit because I know we have folks that have are going through chemotherapy and they're really grateful to be able to be watching. And so it's like, Evan, it's like the old conversations around do we administer the Lord's Supper? Do we give communion to shut-ins? Is that really, or is it only supposed to be happening in the gathered assembly, right? And so it's that just digital now, and like should we make it possible, or is that another Pandora's box that we shouldn't help people thin out their affiliation and their association with churches? Why do we have this? Well, okay, there are good reasons to have it, but do they really outweigh the negative? Anyway, the 2020 the cultural fissures, and I think that people would do well to distinguish first order issues, second order, third order doctrinal issues, because I think that we should be able to have local churches that here's right here's the Bernie bro and right there's the MAGA hat, and it's like, can these people actually like share a pew or a row with one another and worship God together? I would certainly hope so.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, just getting back to like, what are the things that we are absolutely not willing to, to bend on, the deity of Christ, the reality of the resurrection, these kinds of things. And then after that, like, we're going to have some heated conversations probably. But
families do that.
Families do that. Exactly.
Yeah. And that is my segue to, we do that at Theology by the Pint. If you like what you heard from our guest today, you will be glad to hear that he is coming to be our guest speaker in March.
Yep. Talking about like, can we trust the Bible? Does the Bible sometimes get it wrong? Joel's going to get a lot of hate mail after that. Maybe we'll see. Wow. But if people can't wait until March and they want to pick your brain about something, or they want to find you, or they want to, get to know you or whatever, how can people find you? I am very intentionally not engaged on social media. I have a LinkedIn and an email address. So I'm at Joel at BayouCityFellowship.com. My church is Bayou City Fellowship in Spring Branch. You would have to actually physically hunt me down to almost. But I think you'll be at one of our upcoming events, and then you'll be speaking at another one. So basically, just come to our stuff, and you'll find him. And I'll be around, hopefully. I like it. So, and anything you need to know about Theology by the Pint, whether you want to learn more about our leadership team or upcoming events or ways that you can serve, all that kind of stuff, you can find at theologybythepint.org or .com or .net, because we bought them all. Awesome. Anyway, but we're so glad that you sort of tuned in today, using that radio terminology again. Wow. And until we see you next time, we encourage you, as always, to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.